Yeah.
So, Anthony, Dana, and Joan, can you hear me?
Lower the lighting.
If there is a way a little bit lower.
Just a little lower.
Yeah.
Well, I just want you to know, because I don't know how,
Oh, I can see that over there.
okay? 'Cause I don't know what you're doing, but this is possible.
Okay.
And that's
Down
up
is
to you.
Down is
You can
good.
go off, but will you tell me, you want it on a little?
Not up here.
Not
All right.
In the
okay.
back and the back.
That goes that.
I think just, let me see.
Then you know.
How's that? That's, I think,
That Elizabeth and Joan, can you open the chat box? I'm gonna allow any.
I think that they're all muted right now. They should be.
Right, they are muted. Great, oh, thank you. Yeah,
She's much older than her age.
you think?
Yeah. Like she's 18.
All right. Anjana, can you hear us? I'm gonna allow you to talk. Anjana? Can you?
Should I say something?
Oh, yeah.
Can you hear? Can you all hear me? The people online, can you all hear me?
Oh, good. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Super.
All right.
If they have any questions, they can put it into the chat box.
You can, if you have any questions, please go ahead and put your questions in the chat box. We also have a Q&A box too.
Good. They're coming in.
Anjana, I'm not gonna disable your talk. Okay, thank you, Joan. Great. You ready?
Yes, I'm ready. I'm
Okay.
ready. Yep.
All right. Okay. Can I introduce you?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So, welcome everyone. I'm really excited on behalf of the Radnor EAC, the Radnor Library, Radnor Memorial Library, the Easttown EAC, the Community Garden Club at Wayne, and then also the Radnor Conservancy. We're so excited to have Eva Monheim here at the Radnor Memorial Library. So Eva has over 40 years of experience in the horticulture industry. She's an author, an ISA certified arborist, and has taught at the Barnes Arboretum, Delaware Valley University, Temple University, and Longwood Gardens. So I highly recommend checking out her book, Shrubs and Hedges, Discover, Grow, and Care for the World's Most Popular Plants, as well as her award-winning podcast, Plant a Trillion Trees. She's co-host, director, and producer. So our goal for all of us tonight is to come away with some knowledge and practical applications that we can apply to our own landscape, that providing connectivity between those southern states and up into the mid-Atlantic and possibly into the Northeast. Yes, so Excited, without further ado, please, let's give Eva a warm welcome.
Oh, nice. Thank you very much, Bess. I'm very excited to be here. And okay, so I'm just going to just deal with a little bit. I'm just going to use this to move my. Yeah, that's great. Okay. Will that work? Yeah. So this topic came about through several avenues. The first was seeing plants disappearing. And since I've been in this region pretty much my whole life, although I've lived in Europe and other places, the idea of seeing a plant disappear when it's your state tree, like the eastern hemlock, it was named the state tree because it was found in every county in Pennsylvania. And now what we see is it disappearing from our region. And the reason for that is not only from heat, but also the woolly adelgid. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. I also have the podcast, and I started talking with a lot of people on the West Coast, and they're ones who are major nursery growers. And where are they getting the seed for their plants, trees, shrubs? They're going into Southern California for mid-California. They're going into Mexico, down the peninsula, down into the central part of Mexico, and bringing those plants up, growing them in Central California, and having great success with them. And I go back to something that happened to me when I was very young. My cousins had gone on their honeymoon to Williamsburg. And what they wanted to do was bring back some southern magnolias for their New Jersey garden. And they planted them out diligently, and they all died because it was too cold. And I said to them, if you get the seed and plant it, see what happens. And that one seed grew into a 40-foot tree. It was because the seed acclimated itself to the environment in southern Jersey. And it was that kind of example over time, you get to see things that maybe other people aren't noticing. The seedlings died, but the seed, when the seed was planted and it grew, because the seed, whatever seed didn't like it, died or didn't come up, and the ones that could handle it came up. There was a genetic difference. And you can't say that, when people say, oh, it's the species, every species is a little genetically different. In fact, I was hearing something tonight on the radio about how genetics and mutations can occur millions of times in our own bodies. Our cells are changing every day. So it happens in plants too. So I just want to point out too that I have resources listed on this first page. So you can go to those resources if you would like. So here are some pictures of how our climate has been changing. Now, I have to say this because it's important to understand that just because you don't believe in climate change not happening doesn't mean it's not happening. Okay? We could believe in something and it may not be true, or we can believe in something and it can be very true. In this case, we look at the temperature change from 1900 all the way to 2020, and you could see that even if it's a 1 degree change that has happened, it's a 1 degree change that changes everything. So it's like the difference between freeze and thaw. Either your ice cream is going to be frozen or it's going to start to melt. That's the difference. And you know that from your own freezer, right? So this is a really good example of how quickly, within 100 years, a little bit more than 100 years, has changed. So the other thing that we have to consider is temperature, right? But we also have to consider all of us and all of living creatures on the earth. What's happening with them? And if you heard tonight on the news, the gray whale is moving through San Francisco Bay, and it's going underneath the bridge, and it's never done that before. It's going into ship lanes that it's never done that before. Birds travel in these migratory trails. There's also on here not only birds, but we're talking about deer, we're talking about insects migrate, like ladybugs have migrate, especially on the California coast. Dragonflies migrate. So all of these lanes are migratory lanes. And if you notice something really interesting about this, and I hope I could step away from here and go over here to show you, look, what's happening along here? Does anybody know the 101? Here's the 101. Same, we follow migratory trails when we build. 95. Now, you have a concrete roadway all the way up. How do animals cross it? They get killed. Why don't they have bridges like we have bridges? Why don't we make bridges for them? Some animals prefer to go under, like bears. Others like to go over, like deer. So you think about all that and you think, oh, yeah, okay, we have some serious issues. We have to, and said, here's R95. I wanted to put this in because there's really no breaks. Who's delivering our seed from our plants? Who's delivering it? Do you all know how seed gets dispersed? By wind, by birds, by deer. And I used to have a hybrid wolf. And when he would go for his walks, he had these very deep paws. In his paws, he would get caught the acorns. And he would walk the whole way home, wouldn't let me pull him out because he would eat some of them when he got home. That was how the acorns got moved from him or fox and what they discovered just recently when they put the buffalo back in the Midwest, that it was because of the buffalo disappearing and being killed off that we lost plants that they thought were extinct until the buffalo came back. And they discovered that once the buffalo started plowing the ground, because they were plowing, they weren't stamping like humans' feet do, they were plowing, they were lifting seed out of the ground. And what they thought was extinct, the plants are coming back. Also on their fur, they carry protein, the fur is protein, and the fur carries seed. They roll on the ground, they move up and down through the central part of the country, and they're carrying seed with them. What if they can't go to certain areas that they typically go to? Well, that's a problem. And that's where roadways can be a real issue. But first, I want to go back a little bit and talk about these two plants. Our state tree, our state flower, the hemlock, and the mountain laurel. Mountain laurel was made our state flower because it was found in every county in the state of Pennsylvania. And now it's disappearing. It's really hard for it to sit out in the sun. It's just too hot. It burns up. And we've lost a lot of shade. We've lost a lot of our shady areas. So it can't handle full sun all day long and burn it at the end of the day. So that's something that if somebody wants to put it in the garden, I'll say make sure you have the right habitat for it if you're going to plant it. Because you need to have a woodland to put them into, and a moist woodland at that. And of course, I talked about the hemlock, which is being affected by the woolly adelgin and also the heat. So here's the kalmia. We had it at our university at Temple on the understory part of the woodland. And they decided that they didn't want the deer eating it. So they started spraying it with a deer spray. But what happened was they were using a carrier of a fungicide to carry the deer repellent. And after spraying a grouping of plants for several years with a fungicide, you know what happens when we take too many antibiotics? The fungicide actually created a problem with disease. And it killed all the plants underneath the woodland. So we have to really be mindful. So what are we replacing with these plants with? Well, here's something. This Alyssum floridanum, which is the Florida anise tree, has a similar structure that mountain laurel has. It could sit in the same environment. It doesn't have the same flowers, but it has the same structure. And a lot of times it's just the structure that animals need to protect them over the wintertime. So this is an evergreen shrub, and it also has a flower on it. Flower is not anything like our kalmia is, but it does attract pollinators. So that's one example of a replacement plant. Another plant that is disappearing is the white spruce. And this one here, I used to live up in North Wales, and I would walk through these housing developments, and all of a sudden I started noticing these really strange things happening to the evergreens that were planted along people's driveways and along hedgerows where maybe at the edge of a farm. Like, how come they're all dying? And it's the heat and also needle cast disease, which is one of the problems with it. And so this particular plant is leaving us. Well, what do we replace it with? If we don't have any evergreens, that's a problem because that's a protection for our animals in the wintertime. So places like Longwood Gardens, Botanic Gardens are trialing all different types of things. Morris Arboretum, when they had sent out their scientists for plant hunts, they go into all these different areas and explore throughout the country, and they bring back seed and plant it. I told you about the Southern Magnolia. They had Southern Magnolia trials there for years, and now they're using magnolias in the city of Philadelphia too. Abies concolor, which is from the West Coast, but it works because it really can handle the heat, which is really phenomenal. And it has a structure, a pyramidal structure that the white spruce has. And it has, obviously it's not a spruce, it's a fir, but it can take the place of a conifer. And that's what we're looking for. So this is another good example of something that you can, and also we have this as one of our major Christmas trees now. So if you buy it bulb and burlap and you put it in your yard, well, now you have a new plant for your garden. And even the Christmas tree industry has changed because of the heat. They can't grow what they used to grow for Christmas trees, for example. That was an indicator industry too for what was not able to be grown anymore. But this has a citrusy smell, and it's a wonderful plant. It's very reliable. Now, Pinus strobus, I don't know whether you're aware of this, but back in the 1930s when they had the work camps, the men were asked to clear away ribes, currant bushes, remove all the currants in the state of Pennsylvania. We want to have a timber industry, and we can't have it because between the ribes and the pine, you get white pine blister rust. It's a cycle between the two plants. One's a carrier and one gets infected. And so when you get rid of that, you can have an industry and grow your trees. And now we're starting to reintroduce it to the state of Pennsylvania because of food sources. What's more important, humans eating or trees dying? They're both important, but ribes is coming back here now in the state of Pennsylvania. So you'll probably see some trees that are completely dead, pine trees that are completely dead, and you think, what happened to them? It could either be white pine blister rust, or it could be some other disease that's coming along with it. So, and this is what they look like. Now, one of the trees that they're using as a replacement at Longwood, they're planting Pinus flexilis, which is the limber pine from the Pacific Northwest. And it is also a 5-needle pine, but it can withstand our winds and it could stand heavy snow load. Our white pine usually breaks. That's its I want to say that's its wonderful characteristic for saving itself, is to break when snow's on it. We get the benefit, we get the disadvantage of getting either hit with it on our head or falling on our houses. But Pinus flexilis is like the Olympic specialist here. It can drop its limbs and pull them back up again. It's that flexible. You can tie the tree in knots. And I always show my students, I say, look at this. You can tie this stem into a knot. And it is used to make ropes. It was used in the shipping industry on the West Coast for using for sails. They would make ropes for sails. So this is a really interesting plant. And it has a wonderful fragrance. And white pine doesn't mind having it as a neighbor, which is nice. And here it is. This is planted on the back side of Longwood's campus. And here it is at Temple. We had one of the cultivars of it. Also, another one replacing our white pine or filling in a void for other conifers is Pinus wallichiana, which is the Himalayan pine. Another 5-needle white pine. All white pines are 5 needles. Red pines are 3 needles, and so on. And they all have similar characteristics. If we were put back into big Pangea, and when the continents started separating, they were all actually one type of plant. And then as they moved across the globe, they started to change according to where they were located. So that's genetic mutation. And this one here doesn't like wind. It stays smaller, but it has really long needles. And it creates a waste product from the needles that it drops and creates a lot of organic material. It also has big cones for larger beaked birds, where they can get their beaks in there and pull the seed out. We don't really think about this. You know, how are we gonna do this? How's that gonna work? You know. So here they are in a couple of different locations. Quercus rubra, the red oak. This one here is having some serious disease issues, and we're looking at the leaf scorch. And my colleague and I, when I was working at Temple, we did some experimentation, and I sent these students downtown to main campus, and we collected samples down there of red oak and anything that's in the sub-oak red oak category, which would be anything that has a little a bristle at the end of the leaves. And it could be a willow oak, a black oak, a laurel oak. They're all in the subspecies of red oak. And what we found was that if these trees got leaf scorch, and this is what they look like when they're healthy, but this is, I've had students take samples, and this is what happens when they start to not look so great. Or the tips will start to brown. And what we discovered from our experimentation was that within 5 years of the disease attacking the tree will die. So that means if you have 15% of your city forest of red oak and subspecies of red oak, you have to replant your city every 5 years, about 15%. So you have to stay ahead of that. You want to be maybe planting 20%, and you'll be a little bit ahead with 5%. So this was one that we had at campus, and it was looming over one of the labs for the landscape architects. And this one here up and died, and it stood there for a couple years before we took it down. And here you could actually see the vascular system is attacked by the disease and kills the tree. But what can you replace it with? Well, Quercus macrocarpa is a great one, bur oak. And we're using that in the city of Philadelphia now too. This is on our list. I help with the list there, and I help with the list at Penn. And this is a really good tree, and it's from the Midwest, and it does really good. And it can be a solitary tree, or it can be in a forest. And it's called macrocarpa because it has a very big fruit. That fruit's like this big. So, it's like one of the biggest of the acorns. So something like that. And it cannot, because it's from the Midwest and from the plains, it can actually take heat, it could take fire, it could take drought, and it also can handle moisture too. So it's very dependable. So I talked about Tsuga canadensis, eastern hemlock. And at Longwood, we had a collection, more than 3/4 of them are gone. Since I used to go there as a little kid. I mean, started going there when I was 2. And you think about what they had then and what they have now, and the hemlocks, a lot of them are gone. So to spray them all the time is very costly. But also, do you want to keep spraying that and putting your money, your budget into that versus trying some other things? So trialing is a big thing at Longwood. So here on, I think it's, these are hemlock, and hemlock was a state tree because it was in every county, but it was also used in the tanning industry. Philadelphia was an epicenter for tanning back at the turn of the 20th century. And they denuded the forest of hemlock to get the actual bark to soften the hides. And then it was dumped, the rest of it was dumped in the river. So think about all the pollution that came from that. So here's one hedge that's still in existence. This is at Andalusia on the river. They still have their hemlock hedge. I'm marveling at it. But this is how a lot of the big estates had these hedges. Like you could go anywhere in this region and find them up people's driveways because it helped with snow in the wintertime. You wouldn't get your driveway blocked because the trees kept the snow from getting on your driveway. And here is the woolly adelgid and the cone. Now, what's really important about the cone is it's an important and only food source for the crossbill. So the crossbill lives up in Canada and comes down into the upper part of the East Coast in the Maine area, New Hampshire, Vermont. And rarely does it ever come down to Pennsylvania. But in the I think around 2015 or 2014, we had what they call an eruption of crossbills that came into Longwood Gardens and into central Pennsylvania because their seed ran out up there. So what do? They come down further and further until they find their food sources. So what I thought was really clever, they're replacing our hemlock where it can't grow with Chinese hemlock. Even though the seeds are a little bit bigger, the birds can still eat them. So that it's not going too far from its regular food source. And they're planting Chinese hemlock at Longwood with very good results. And you can see here that they really look beautiful. Our birds here recognize it. Absolutely, they recognize it. Now, look, you hear all kinds of things, but if you think about us, and when we have a group of people that come from another country and they bring their food here, do we eat it or we don't eat it? It's not junk, it's food that group of people eats, like Indian food. Like they brought it to Britain, and guess what? That's the #1 food that they eat in Britain now. Indian food. And they didn't eat it back in the turn of the 20th century. It's still wholesome and good, but it's the shift in the paradigm. Everything is changing. Everything is moving. The earth has always done this. It's just we're witnessing it at a much faster rate than ever before. And that's what's so alarming, I think, to most people. So I wanted to show you the Haddington Wood Project, which I had a chance to visit and to talk to the people who were very much involved with it when it first went in. And the Haddington Wood Project is in like the Cobbs Creek area of Fairmount Park. And what they did was they decided that they were going to see, first of all, how they could keep invasives out and how they can keep the upper story of our woodlands. And then they also had three, the blue ones, the blue spots are upper canopy from southern states, and then also the lower canopy southern species. So on your list, you'll actually see the southern species, they had like underneath the canopy, they had calicarpa, calicanthus, and they had an upper story tree of the yellowwood, which we're now using in Philadelphia, and Fothergilla, which is something that most people don't even know. Hydrangea quercifolia, the oak leaf hydrangea, they brought up from the south. Itea, Leucothoe, Morella cerifera, which is the southern bayberry, and they used all these, and underneath the red southern red oak and the loblolly pine instead of the white pine. And what they discovered is almost everything that they planted just did fine. And when they planted the native trees, they decided that they were going to do 10-acre plots to see if they planted heavier, whether they could keep invasives out. So they were doing two big experiments at the same time. And what they discovered, they had these test plots, these 4 10-acre plots, and didn't plant any trees at all. And then the next grouping, they planted 19 per 10 acres, 44 per 10 acres, and 89 per 10 acres. And what they discovered is the higher the amount of tree number per 10-acre plot, the better the plants did, because they could share resources. We talked about this. They can share resources. You hear that from Suzanne Simard when she talks about forestry. And it keeps out the invasives, because the canopy acts like a repellent. You know, the leaves blow and they throw the seed in other directions. So that's pretty cool. And also less likely that you're going to get invasives from around, except for maybe on the edges of the 10-acre plot. So these plants were utilized, and they had really great results. Now the project is still going on in Haddington Woods, and they're keeping a good eye on it. Clodrastis kentuckia, which is yellowwood, was here for a very long time because Bartram brought it from the Midwest. And they've discovered that it does really well. This one here is at Longwood Gardens. And Longwood Gardens even made a bigger planting of it at their new Longwood Reimagined at the new conservatory. They have a whole big section of it. But there's also some pink ones of this and variations of color to the flowers. It's in the bean family, so it fixes nitrogen and it adds nutrients to the soil. And it has a really canopy that you can actually grow other things underneath, like hydrangeas. And so what this map, and I think this is probably, I would say this is the best spent taxpayer money ever, because here you get these maps and you could actually see where the native plants were located, where they think they might have been located, and where they are now being, or some natural stands have occurred, and places where they're coming in because of botanic gardens and such. So you get a really good sense of how far this plant goes. The range is, I think, the original range is very small. And if you don't expand it, you may lose it. So if it grows here, why not utilize it? And it does really well here too. Pinus taeta, the loblolly pine, this is used in starting down about Delaware. You see it start in Delaware all the way down. Eastern Shore, yeah, Maryland. And this is a key timber tree, but it's also a fantastic pine tree. It's also fire resistant too. So here it is. They had experimented with loblolly years ago at Longwood Gardens. Before they built the new conservatory, they used to have a hillside there, and they would put anything up on that hillside that they wanted to test to see how it could handle the wind and the cold, because that was really brutal up there. And this one here did fine. It was like there was no batting of an eyelash here, just kept growing. And of course, the cones provide a really good food source. And here is where it typically grows. Even in the very tip of southern Jersey, you'll find it. Well, why not bring it up a little further north so that we could benefit from it if we can't grow our white pine, or we can't grow as much of it as we used to. So we'll still have some evergreen. Another thing that you have to keep in mind is, how about our hurricanes? Where are they hitting, and how are they well, hurricanes push animals out of the way. So think about a bird that gets knocked off course because of a hurricane, because they're migrating at that time during September. They're migrating. What happens to the birds? Does anybody ever think about, where do they go? Where do they land? What are they eating, right? Well, a lot of times they get knocked off course. They can wind up in the Mississippi River Valley when they're supposed to be on the East Coast. So what are they dropping? Seeds from here. Or if they're coming in reverse, they'll come up and they'll bring things from the far south. So you start to think, okay, this is really making some sense here. So when you're out in your garden and you see something that's strange, I was out at my friend's house, Northview, Jenny Rose Carey, a lot of people know her. She, yeah, well, she's a very good friend, yeah. Yeah, I used to live right down the street from her. So she said, come on over and just look at the garden. She wasn't there, and I was walking around with Hannah, her head gardener, and I said, Hannah, look at this plant. I said, it's a rhamnus, but it's not Rhamnus cathartica, which is what's rhamnus? I'm losing the thought on that one. But anyway, it's invasive. And I said, but this is a rhamnus that's not invasive, I don't think. And we looked it up, and sure enough, it's the Carolina rhamnus from North Carolina. Now, wait a minute. How did it get into her garden? She didn't plant it. Well, what people started noticing is that rhamnus is appearing in woodlands around our area. And even Jenkins started planting it and selling it as a plant for an understory. So how crazy is that, you know? So the southern oak, the southern red oak, this one here was at Temple for a very long time, at least 100 years. And it still survived. It survived the tornado that was there. But this one here is starting to show signs of the dieback on the tips. So leaf scorch. So you have to be careful of this one. So you might have to pick another upper story canopy tree. But here it is at Temple. It was a big tree, and it was well over 100 years old. So this one here, they're recommending, look at its range, and it is found in New Jersey and in some parts of Pennsylvania. American beautyberry. Now, I have to tell you the story because you'll appreciate this. You know, when the native tribes were forced to go on the march, the Trail of Tears, they took with them their plants that they used for healing from the east to the west. And they knew how to use them. And so at the end of the Trail of Tears, my friend was a Native American. He said to me, Eva, I want you to come over here and take a look at this circle. It was a circle, a beautiful circle of all the native plants that they brought with them on their journey. And in this grouping was Calocarpa americana, which was not typically native to Oklahoma, where they ended up. Tulsa, I think it was Tulsa. And I said, well, Russ, I go, why don't we have this? Why aren't we using this here in Philadelphia? I said, this is a fantastic, and we're using the Asian form, which is starting to seed in. We should be using this. So sure enough, we started growing it here. Now it's available. And I was doing my shrub class at Longwood, and I said to the audience, I said, this also makes a really good jam. I've never had it, but it's supposed to be really good. So if you can. So one of my students was building her garden, and she planted a whole bunch of them. She didn't tell me. And one day she came in when we were getting together, and she put this jar on my desk, and she said, Eva, she said, here's the Calocarpa jam. And it was so delicious, and it wasn't real sweet. It almost tasted like you were eating something really good for you, rather than, that real sweet. And the birds love it. Right. So if you've never seen it, this is what it looks like. This is at the Trail of Tears, this picture here. And look at the berries on this thing. It is spectacular. Now, why aren't we growing this? We need to grow more of this because of the purple color. Now, if you know, birds are very smart. They know their antioxidants by looking at the berries. So, dark berries are the best berries of all. And they will eat the black berry, dark berries, blueberries first. And then the next color is the purple berries, then the red berries, then the orange berries. They rarely will eat the white berries because they don't have the nutrition in it, like other ones. So if you see like a Calocarpa duet, which has white berries on it, they don't touch them. Yeah. Wow. How could you not love it? How could you not love it? And you know what? I would honestly tell you, I had a herd of deer that came into my one house. Six of them would come in every night. And I had my garden so packed with plants. And they would come in and they would taste a little bit of this and taste a little bit of that. And then they would bed down for the night. And get up in the morning, have a little bit of this, have a little bit of that, because I never planted too much of one thing because they would strip it. Like when people say, I planted all my patients and they ate them all. I go, of course, you left a smorgasbord of the same thing. And that's one of their favorites because it's juicy, right? So I know it is. It is no joke. But here's where it's native to. You could see that just slightly south of us in Maryland. Calacanthus floridus is another one. The Carolina allspice, really fabulous. And it has a very spicy smell to the leaves and the flowers, and great fall color, great in the riparian areas and also on hillside slopes, good for erosion control. But look where it's really native to. You see it towards the western part of Pennsylvania, in the Pittsburgh region and down into Wheeling, West Virginia. So, moving it east slightly would be really helpful for us because it would be another good plant that could fill in. Also, your Fothergilla, and this one here is major. I think I might have skipped a slide. Yeah, the Fothergilla major. There's also Fothergilla minor, or the dwarf Fothergilla, which is fabulous. I know Chanticleer has a lot of that. That's wonderful. And early spring, and it's related to Hemamelis. It's in the Hemimalidaceae family, which is the witch hazel family. with those long strappy petals. A great fall color. But look where it's native to. Do you think it's going to survive if we don't move it? Look, it's only 20 counties in all of the entire country. 20 counties, that's it. So having this moved around is really helpful. And they're also great for pollinators, fabulous for pollinators. Quercifolia, hydrangea quercifolia is another one, which is fantastic too. This one here has the most wonderful leaf to it, which is where it gets its name, quercifolia, quercus-like or oak leaf-like plant. And it is very fragrant. The outside petals or the bracts are sterile, and the inside section are the fertile flowers, so that there is a protection for the pollinators as they come in. If it starts to rain, they can get underneath those sterile flowers to protect themselves. But there's so many new ones coming out on the market. And I happen to have gone to Proven Winners a couple times up in Michigan. They have a big test area, trial area in the owner's property. And you should see some of the weird colors, like yellow leafed ones, coming about just by crossing one with another. The genetics is very diverse on this, and the fall colors are exceptional. So this is another good one for pollinators. And this is where it would typically be found, in those states down there, and then moved to South and North Carolina, but moved up here in that that Haddington Wood Project, and they all survived. So I think that's really fascinating to see. But also, if you're looking for another plant for pollinators, because not all of our pollinators are native, that's an important thing to consider too. And of course, Itea virginica, which is a wonderful plant for riparian areas. It has a beautiful red stem and a beautiful leaf. And I just love this plant. It produces these little capsules that will open up in late winter to feed small beaked birds. So if you're looking for something for that real little tiny finch, that's where you'll find it. And you'll see that this is native to South Jersey, but right there along the Delaware River happens to be the cutoff point. And so we're starting to see some, there are a lot of these out on the market. The Henry Foundation has a couple cultivars that have been released on the market, like Henry's Garnet, Little Henry, those cultivars. But the birds are eating the seeds and dropping them on the Pennsylvania side. So if you see something unusual growing in your garden, check it out. Leucothoe fontanesiana, another one, the featherbush. This one's from the southern states too, but being brought north, this one here has transformed riparian areas. It really is a good erosion control plant. This is taken at Jenkins Arboretum. Jenkins has a really good collection of this, and the flowers. It's called dog hobble because it meshes so well that if a dog gets caught in it, they come out hobbling. You have to pull them out. You actually have to pull the dogs out. They could break their legs in this stuff. But here, take a look at you'll see it jump to New York because New York had been experimenting with it early on. And here, again, here's another section where you see it. If you really drill down, you'll see the counties that have it still as a native. Morella cerifera, this is a little bit different than Morella pennsylvanica, which is our northern bayberry, but there's a crossover. This happens, and Karen, you've seen this, where we cross over the plant species from Delaware into New Jersey. These two will actually cross spaces with one another. And where you have crossing like that, sometimes you'll get a hybrid, waiting to see what a hybrid will come from this. But this is the southern wax myrtle, and is also what they make candles from, like our northern bayberry. And it's a really important one for migration for birds, a really important one. And you can see the seeds here. Male and female, separate plants. So you have to make sure that you have both in order to have fruit. The leaves are much narrower. They're not as wide. They're not as shiny, but they are fantastic and great for drought conditions. And I kind of am recommending this for along highways where they're putting salt, because these are very salt tolerant. You know, our highways look pretty ugly sometimes. We see the junipers coming up, which is great, but then they go back in and weed everything out again. If they had this and the northern bayberry along, we could have much more food for our migrating friends. And of course, this is where you'll see it growing. So why do plants need help migrating? Again, we talked about the roadways, historical context of migratory trails. We built all our roads on top of deer paths and bird traveling areas. We've annihilated these places where they would typically be moving. And here are the migratory trails throughout the world. And if you think this is also the same migratory trails that people take. So all animals migrate. So when you're looking at this, think about that when you're talking about food sources. Oops, what happened? Yeah. But when you're talking about food sources, you can have a seed come up from South America. It may not survive our winter, but it may grow in our Atlantic area for the summer. Or the Mississippi flyway. That's another really active one. And here's another one for the United States. These are the four that are major. Here we have minor ones too, but these are important migratory trails for birds and other animals, as you saw from the very beginning of the slides. I also want to point out too that not only are these areas migratory trails, but they're crossovers for plants. And one plant in particular that I did a lot of research on is Amelanchier, our serviceberry. Called serviceberry because, well, there's a couple of different reasons why it's called serviceberry, but because it provides lots of services. But it was originally called serviceberry because it bloomed at the same time that you could bury the dead. That you could put a shovel in the ground and dig a grave. So serviceberry. But there's I think like 400 names for Amelanchier across the country up into Canada. It goes all the way up to the Arctic, all the way down into Mexico. All the different species of Amelanchier. Some of them are shrubs, some of them are trees, and they're critical. When you find a plant that is found everywhere like that, or a genus that's found everywhere like that, it's a really important plant for animals. And here, the 101 in California is another migratory trail. So what I wanted to show you is what they've done over in California, which we're just starting to do here, is to make bridges for animals to cross. So one of the headlines, and this is in your handout, the headline from NPR, across the world, migrating animal populations are dwindling, and why? So some of the major problems are, again, we talked about the interference by humans and so on, threatened extinction. And the migration becomes harder and harder and harder as we keep moving into other animal areas. And I'll use an example. Just recently, there was another disease that was just discovered by bats, the fruit bat. And the reason why it was discovered was because nobody ever bothered its habitat until recently. And now the bat carries this disease that can kill humans. So, you know, we keep encroaching on everybody's space. But this is the bridge that they built in California, and for the Liberty Crossing. And if you're out there quite a bit, you sometimes will see a mountain lion trying to cross the road. There was a mountain lion, I forget what her number was, but everybody would just slow down as soon as they saw her, because she would try to cross the 8-lane highway to get to the other side, because on that side is where they mated, and then the other side was where they raised their little cats, so, or kittens. So when they started building this, they actually found pictures of animals crossing before it was finished. There wasn't even any plant material there, but they were crossing like, you know, somebody would cross a log in a creek, which I thought was really, but they are doing more and more of this. And again, it depends on what you're trying to preserve, whether you build above or below. And bears definitely need below. They need to have a tunnel. So that's important. So the wildlife crossing, and I won't read this to you, but you'll see it in the notes. So how can we help? Extend food sources. So if we're building a tiny forest here, tiny forests are just popping up everywhere. We're like the last country in the world to know about tiny forests. It started in Japan back in the 70s, and it's worked its way across Europe and then now into the United States. The Tiny Forests Project is a way to put food sources back for animals, but also to reduce temperatures, etc. But planting native plants, like, and I'll show you some of the plants I'm looking at, like aronia, red chokeberry, black chokeberry. But we need to be mindful of what is happening in our habitats. And of course, guano is a really good way for birds to drop seed, and they're already in these fertilizer packets, so they start to grow. And I don't know whether you've ever noticed that if you've ever taken a walk and you see these little trees coming at the foot of another tree, it's because this bird was sitting up on the branch and dropped his guano in that little crack, and that's how the tree got started. And I love going to Andalusia, the garden along the Delaware River, because across the way are lots of American hollies, but not a lot in Pennsylvania. They've kind of were exterminated because they were used for tools. And so the birds are going there and dropping their guano on the other side of the river. And these little holly trees are starting to pop up, which is kind of cool. So if you look at that, so habitat, and we have to make sure that we continue to plant what they need. Consider designing hubs, recharge areas, recharge stations. Like it could be at the end of your town, or it could be in an area that's not used as much. Build more land bridges, free up airspace and water lanes during migration, and keeping the lights off during migration season. People who are working on this, I love this guy, Steve. He's up in British Columbia, but he's using species from Central California and up to grow into British Columbia, because that's how crazy the temperatures are. He grows 15 million seedlings a year. He's one of the largest producers of plants in 1 year than anybody else in the world. And of course, David Tushler, he's not with Devil Mountain anymore, but he was the one who would have set up these orchards in different areas. Like if there was a grouping of trees that he knew, he would seed them and then plant them and then create these orchards in different communities so that he can go and collect seed from them or have children. He would pay children $1,000 for, he would pay them $1 a seed. And he would pay them $1,000 to get the seed collected by the children in elementary school, which is like the best thing since sliced bread, I think. So these are two guys that have been doing it for a very long time. Important plants as food sources, and I put these together. I talked about Amelanchier, also known as shad blow. That got the name because shad were running up at the Delaware at the same time the tree was blooming. So they knew when to get the fish. This is at Andalusia. And here is our canadensis, Amelanchier canadensis, is all the way up into Canada, all the way down into Georgia. Here's another one. This is alnifolia, has a smaller little leaf that looks like an ulmus. This one happens to be a cultivar. Look at the range on this one. This is crazy. I want to take you back to that. The range on that one was on both coasts, all the way up to the Arctic Circle. So you can see that. Aronia melanocarpa, the dark berries. This one here, I always laugh at this because my background's Polish, and in Poland, this plant is more popular than it is here in its native habitat. They grow more aronia than anywhere else in the world to make juices, jellies, and jams because it's so high in antioxidants. They also use it as a medication. So here it is. This is an important plant. You see it's on major flyways. Also Aronia arbustifolia, the red chokeberry. And this one here is also, look at the area. It's a little bit further west, goes a little further west, but it's also an important migratory plant. This is the Itea that I was showing you earlier. This one here is another plant that is a good migratory plant, and you'll see why. Look at how far up it goes. It goes up into southern New Jersey. This one here, most people have never seen, but my aunt was a real big experimenter of plants. I kind of got a lot from her. And this is Cerilla racemiflora. This is the swamp tie-tie. And this one here is native from Virginia down below, all the way down to the tip of South America. And here it grows more like a shrub, and then down there in South America, it's a tree. And this, if you don't see 1,000 to 2,000 pollinators at one time, you don't see any. And birds will eat the seed on this all winter long. Tiny beak birds, waxwings, you name it. And this is where it's native to. But we were able to get it to grow up north, and we're now planting it up here. Swamp tie-tie. Also another one, Euonymus americanus. The first time I saw this was on the Trail of Tears also, and in Oklahoma. And why don't we have it here? Well, we have it here. We just weren't planting it. We just weren't, and it grows in these, massive stands. And so here's a plant that has a close association with deer. And when the deer graze it and walk along it, the hooves and the weight of the hooves on the plant roots know to push up new plants because the deer has been there. So it's actually that vibration is what triggers the embryonic cells to push up a new plant. I just find this to be so fascinating. And you know, why don't we know all this? And here's where you find American euonymus. It's the burning bush, but our burning bush, not the burning bush of the invasive type. This is our native burning bush. Another one which I asked Longwood to get for me because it's so rare, Zenobia pulverulenta, which is the dusty Zenobia or honeycup, and it's so beautiful, and it's in the same group. It's an ericaceous plant. You'll see it, but look at the location of where it's at. It's only in a very small area, and if storms annihilate it, it's going to be gone forever. So bring it up, move it up. And also clethra is another one. It's native to New Jersey, but there's so many different variations of clethra. Hummingbird, this happens to be hummingbird. This one here is at Longwood. It's been in this location for years and doesn't need a lot of maintenance, just pruning along the pathway, and it attracts so many different types of pollinators, including hummingbirds. So you could do that as a way station. And here you can actually see where it grows. Another one, probably you've never seen this one, is the toothache tree. This is what the native population used to quell the sore tooth. Yeah, Xanthosxylum americanum, which is the toothache tree or the prickly ash. And look where it is, but we have never really brought it onto the market. This is something that we just kind of ignore. Also, Aesculus pavia, the red buckeye, and I'm almost done. The red buckeye is here at Jenkins Arboretum. Wherever this is in bloom, the hummingbirds are there, guaranteed. So if they're opening and the hummingbirds follow it up, so the warmer we get, the further they move up north. And this is what it looks like. And here you can see that Pennsylvania is still not in there, but it goes all the way up to Ohio, and we're trying to move it further north. Another one, which is Euonymus atropurpureus, eastern wahoo burning bush also, but it's our native burning bush. And this one here is just spectacular. It opens up with orange berries on the inside, and this is where you typically find it. Have you ever seen it? Probably not. But the best example is at Jenkins Arboretum and also Mount Cuba. And this one here, Prunus maritima, why aren't we planting beach plum all along our highways where we're putting salt? Because this is salt tolerant. We could have these long corridors of places where birds can go and eat. And this is something that we should be using for people too, because it's a great plant, very high in nutrition. And the plums are fabulous. Even the rabbits love it. I want to show you the rabbits. We'll get back here. Sorry about that. Oh, there. I was down in Ocean City at a wedding, and I was standing on the boardwalk, and I looked down, and here they were eating the beach plum. So yeah, and there's the beach plum more towards New England, but again, we could be planting more of this. What I'm going to do is ask you if you could, if you want to, just go to this survey to help me make my talks better. So I would appreciate that if you have a moment. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to take them. Yeah. Thank you.
I've been planting southern France, Radnor garden for about.
Yeah.
And I have experience with both the plants on the Haddon with some of the others and I have had no trouble with them from a climate, but I do have trouble with that year prep. They want to eat it. And I think that's also one of the reasons that the ones for 50 years don't like.
And I think you're right about that. There's also another reason why invasives are so common. When we kill off something, we never replant anything. You know, I know you do, but I'm just saying in general, they'll spray something and then they just leave it vacant. Like what? Yeah, I hear you.
Years for Christmas coconut, and I've had
yes.
good success. Now I have been doing this typically with respect to plants that are south of here because I want to anticipate
the climate change,
the animals too, right? And the plants.
Absolutely.
So much slowly. I've always been not so interested. A Chinese hemlock, a Eastern hemlock, or
right, a Western coast, right? Yeah.
Right? Has there been any work been done on how much wildlife value these other plants might have? What
they do. The Chinese ones will attract the crossbills, and other birds will eat this. It will eat the seed too.
But there's insect also, right? I mean, so many.
Yeah, not every tree is an attractor to insects. It has another purpose. And it could be just for the seed itself, the cones to reseed. So in other words, if I'm going to be a chef, I want to feed everybody, right? But if I'm really not a chef and I'm really an artist, that's where I'm going to put my energy. The trees are the same way. Plants are the same way. They all have talents. We just haven't researched enough to know what those talents are. We just have been with our heads in the sand and not looking to see what purposeful things they're doing, whether it's stabilizing the ground, whether it's being a pump to bring up water, or whether it's to create a color that is a guide for a bird that's in the sky, or a pattern that attracts a bird to another food type. These are all things that we are already starting to learn, but not everybody does. And that's why it's important to have people like you who are experimenting and saying, yes, it's working. Yeah, and I'll thank you for that. Yes. Oh, yes, okay. And there, she was giving her comments on what she's growing in her garden. That was more of a comment rather than a question. Yeah, and you had your hand up. You were.
I had right there in North. That beautiful magnolia, beautiful. See there after the small redwood started to grow.
Because the seed.
Yeah, now it's a big redwood, which I thought was interesting because I'm California, but I did not bring it.
Okay, now here's a case in point. That seed might have been dropped by a bird who was in your magnolia tree, and it didn't grow until the conditions were correct for it to grow. That happens a lot in woodlands when a tree drops or a storm comes through and it pulls, creates a space or a glade, an open glade. That open glade has seeds stored below, and you should see what pops up so quickly. Or like after a fire in New Jersey, we go to look after fires. Within 1 week's time, you'll have a whole understory of Galisacea, which is the black huckleberry. It just comes up because the conditions are right. So that's what happens. And thank you for sharing that. And you had above the ground. Oh, he's asking about focusing above the ground.
Right.
They're looking for drugs.
Oh,
They're looking for things that are below.
You're right.
Plus all of the native bacteria, fungi that are below the ground. What do your near natives? You're moving natives of other states into here. Are they bringing all of their drugs and all of their other things with them, or are they in? I mean, how are we losing that here up north?
Okay, so we are losing some of our insects because we've lost the trees that they're associated with.
Right.
So when you bring a new one up, you're also going to have them associate with what's here, but also they usually come with something on them when they're planted. And a lot of times they'll put in mycorrhiza fungi with that particular plant from those fields that they're growing them in, and then they'll send them up here, and so we have that going on, and that's a really good commentary. The commentary was about what's happening below the soil. We have saturated our soils with so many toxins that we don't have. We were talking about this earlier. We don't have lightning bugs anymore. We don't have the larvae, or even Japanese beetles. Even though they were brought here, the grubs are extremely important for robins. Most people don't know that because they go after those Japanese beetle grubs like crazy. Or the nymphs from the spotted lanternfly. I noticed that the sparrows were eating them on my garden, and they were going crazy. I'm thinking, why do I have like 100 sparrows in this one section? And here they were eating the small little nymphs that they could get in their beaks. You see, so that's a good question, but we need to be more observant and write it down. You know, people that I know write everything down, what they see. The ladies that I travel with, when they looking at birds, they'll say, hey, I never saw that bird here before. There must be a certain food source that's bringing them here. I wonder what it is. And then they'll follow them. Yeah. So that's a good point. Good point. Yes.
I wonder if you could do some research, like iNaturalist data with certain plants, like more certain kinds of like birds are spotted more in areas with new plants.
So using iNaturalist to come up with ways to see if new plants are bringing in insects. Is that what you're saying? Okay. So yeah, so that's another thing. And I mean, there's just so much that we don't know. You know, we think we know, but we haven't even touched the big iceberg that's below. And that's below the soil too. So yeah, I do appreciate you all coming out tonight. And make sure you take a handout. There's links on there that you can use for resources. I have a YouTube station I post every day, a little video. And there's a podcast. We have some really good guests coming up from around the world. So
Great.
thank you. Thank you. Okay, so there's some questions here.
No, there.
Okay. Commentary. Okay. Okay. Well, I heard about you today. How are you?
Busy. I saw Liz Porter.
What's her name?
Like, he was coming to Radnor. Really? She didn't tell me. I'm like, I'm going.
Yeah,
She signed up online, but
Yeah,
I'm
there
like,
there
I'm
was a lot of
going
people
because
online. There was like over 20-some people.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
said,
So,
"I'm going
I
because
didn't know it was
it's
gonna be
close enough."
there. And I was at Radnor, I mean, was at Swarthmore this morning, because I was sitting on education and told people there that I was gonna be there, but, I did a session for them for the kids. I did, planting seeds, that kids would learn how to plant seeds. We did that in April, and then they wanted me to come back.